Good morning, Bitcoiners. I hope you're doing well. I'm loving my life. Who could complain on a day like today? Looks like my angles are not great. I'm not really complaining. I'm just making sure you don't have to see the XRP ads because I know you're going to get annoyed. So am I. I thought I had the angles figured out, but I don't. Let me reconfigure. I guess I can't hide it and give you, I was trying to give you some sunrise over there, but I don't think that's going to work. So I think pretty much the same angle I had yesterday is the only way to go. Indeed. Wow, this will work. This will work. You get the point. The sun is up, right? The sun is up. We got proof of sunrise here. It's happening. Grace and mercy never serve to set aside the law, and sowing and reaping breakfast with the Bampians. We love it. Thank you, Chef Zero. JJ Fox, hey gang, good morning, and thank God the sun is up. Raise your mug because Bitcoin is running. You're stealing my line, but that's okay. We're going to say it again later anyway. Good morning, Awakeners. There you all are. I tell you what, it ain't going well for the NPCs. No way. We're going to have fun with NPC news. Not going to make it. No. Morning, y'all. Good morning. And Great Awakening crew, happy Tuesday. Lee J369. Good morning, gang. JJ Fox asks, do you have real coffee today? I figured out my life, things, the human adaptation. I adapted. Everything was ahead of schedule today. Brandon Gentili fixed my charger problem by telling me that you can actually charge a MacBook with a USB-C cable. So I don't need the lightning port. I didn't know that. I didn't know you could use a typical phone charger on a laptop. It just charges really slowly. And in fact, it's not even really charging. It's plugged in, but it won't die. So it's going down slowly and sort of charging, but that's good enough. We don't need it to, we don't got to run the show pinned at 100 on the battery, right? No doubt. So thank you, Brandon, for that. I had a good time hanging out with him yesterday. Lots of Bitcoiners here. So he was someone I saw last night and yesterday. So cruising around. Lots of people here in Vegas, of course. So easy to come across all of our favorite Bitcoiners. We love it. So indeed, we got the cable fixed. So update. And I was able to get, not only did I not order that garbage iced coffee that was really syrup with stupid water mixed in, so I didn't have to bother with that today. I got their drip coffee first off. That was the first one I had at 4 a.m. or whatever when I woke up. And it was good. But I managed to get to Starbucks, and I have a delicious, amazing, incredible pike place with a shot of espresso. That's my order. One of my orders, anyway, that I like at Starbucks is the shot of espresso into the drip coffee. So I got a turbocharged coffee today. So I feel like I'm almost, like my brain is normal. Yesterday, we were definitely missing a couple of gears. I actually struggled for much of the morning afterwards. I probably had 10 coffees in the lounge, the speakers lounge yesterday, because I couldn't even remember people's names. I was talking with people from Metaplanet, and I was like, you know, the guy at Metaplanet, and it's like, of course I know it's Dylan LeClaire, but I literally couldn't remember his name. And it happened again and again. I just kept forgetting people who I clearly knew, and I would say, you know the guy. I sounded like Joe Biden. So it was pretty funny, and we are feeling a lot better. Once I had the 10 cortados or something that I had in the lounge, they were very good. So I kept drinking them. I was fine. I just had to make sure. I had 2 stage appearances yesterday, so I had to make sure I was heavily caffeinated for both of those. One was with Eric Yakes and Erin Redwing. I don't know if you guys know her. She's from the, what's it called again? I like her podcast. She's with Casey Rodomore, the Hell Money Show. Eric Yakes, a venture capitalist in this industry, both really cool people. Then after I had one with G Money, he gave me some swag yesterday. So I've got the G Money, who you all love, t-shirt on today. This is one of my new favorite t-shirts. He's got the digital 1776 thing happening. So I'm getting my swag going here in Vegas. I think he got a flag here, the Bitcoin US flag. Great t-shirt. Happy to get it. So that's what's going on. We got our coffee. We got a sunrise. We're doing great, everyone. Let's have a coffee and talk about what's new. There you go. Let's see. Yeah, real coffee expression on my face. I just bought XRP, JJ Fox. Of course you did. Look, they're right there. It's happening, guys. We got to raise the standard, guys. So I found out what's going on. It's because there is an XRP separate event here in Vegas. So they do XRP events, and they have one here in Vegas simultaneous to the Bitcoin conference. And in fact, last night I was at a reception under at Paris, I guess it's called, and it's where the fake Eiffel Tower in Vegas is, and it was an outdoor thing under that Eiffel Tower. And across the street, there was another one of these big, huge banner projection ads for XRP. So that was pretty funny. You're like surrounded by XRP stuff. Hilarious. You know that I applied to a job at Ripple in 2015 or something like that? You know, it was cool tech. It was a good idea at the beginning. This is before there was an XRP coin. It was just the Ripple protocol at the time. There was no coin yet. And I wasn't aware of all the tomfoolery with Jed McCaleb and Jesse Powell and stuff like that yet. I only found out about it right then. Someone did a big expose in 2015 talking about the origins of their internal shares they issued or tokens. I forget exactly what happened. But there you go. But yeah, I did apply to a job at Ripple, not XRP. Like I said, there was no XRP yet. It was just the Ripple protocol in 2015. So there you go. Let's go, Brandon. Beautiful sunny day here today. Great news. Chatelet barely 45. Did you all love the Star Spangled Banner a la Jimi Hendrix that kicked the conference off? That Bitcoin guitar was cool. The idea was sort of cringe, I thought. Yeah, I think they do that at most events, actually. I think they've been, since Nashville, I think every one of them has started with the U.S. national anthem in some way. But the guitar, I think I even featured on the show once, just about Bitcoiner time preference and mastery and that kind of stuff. So I think I did put the guitar on the show when it first came out, because that guitar has been around for over a year now, I think. And you know, I used it as an example one day when I saw it, but I got to see it in person. They had it in the art gallery yesterday here in Vegas, and people were ripping on it, just playing it a few times. I went to the art gallery to see Tommy, who's a regular here with the Great Awakening gang, and he runs the art gallery at the event. So I went to the art gallery yesterday afternoon or something like that, and people were playing the guitar and having fun and shredding on the guitar. So that was pretty fun. Dripped out in the antlers, barely 45 says, soft war intensifies. Indeed. Too many angels. Las Vegas is like that, says Chef Zero. Good morning, crew. A great replacement for coffee in Vegas, Nolan, is something called cocaine. Haven't tried it yet. Experts say it's hit or miss. I've never tried cocaine in my life, so I don't know. My dad, I had the benefit of a dad who was a hippie who tried all the drugs. He never tried heroin or anything like that, but I had an uncle who was a heroin addict at one point. So, but he kicked it. He's still alive and doing great. But my dad was around all of that stuff in the 60s and early 70s. And my dad gave me the best drug advice when I was young when it comes to that. He said, you know, try pot, try mushrooms, maybe LSD one time. Everything else, he said, is a scam. Alcohol is the worst. He told me all of those things. So I was never really a big drinker. I definitely drank a lot when I lived in Asia, just because what do you do? And I developed a bit of a drinking habit in France first, because I was drinking wine at lunch and all that kind of stuff. But you know, I would celebrate with some alcohol when I was in college. I was not even a weekly drinker. Maybe a weekly drinker, you know, and if I did once a week, it was like 2 or 3 drinks. But when I got to Asia, boy, oh boy, I became, 3 or 4 nights a week. Not my first year. My second year was when I really hit the bottle. And when I went to law school, again, I was probably on a once or twice a week situation where I would get, pretty tipsy and buzzed. And definitely, I have sympathy for all those people who we're going to talk about the bottle stealers today. I used to take bottles from Parliament all the time at parties, so I get why people are doing it. When I worked in Parliament, I would always swipe bottles at the party when they were kicking you out. Now, I was never being evacuated for a gun issue, but it was something that most young people on the Hill would do. And then, but that's, so when I went back as a lawyer to Japan, I really drank a lot that year. That was like peak drinking in my life. I was, I guess, 28 at the time. And that was the second time I lived in France, in Japan. And then when I came back and worked in Parliament, probably the first year I still was drinking 2 or 3 times a week. But then I stopped at that point. That was the end. Before it became kind of trendy, I'd already more or less quit alcohol. Only because I just couldn't handle it anymore. I never got a hangover in my life, ever. I was never sick or hungover or anything like that. And then suddenly I started to get hangovers, around 30 years old. And that was done. The minute I got like sick from alcohol, I was like, this is dumb. I'm not doing this again. So we rarely drink, a couple beers a year type of thing. I may have a drink tomorrow night, thinking about it. We'll see if it ends up going that way. It's also because working in events, once I started working in these events, first of all, you get offered free alcohol everywhere. And so you can't really take it because you're working, and I got to go on stage this morning. I got stuff to do. I couldn't take, it's free drinks all night last night. It's always free drinks at these things. I never take them because I usually, and it's been, I guess, 10 years now that I do these events. You can't do it. But then because I have it free all the time, I don't want to pay for it ever. Because it's like, well, it was just offered free. Why would I pay any money at a bar? So that's the other reason these days, where it's almost never. I think I drank on New Year's Eve this year. I had some tequila, which I do like. But that was, I try to keep it for the celebrations, here and there. Not anti-alcohol, not anti. I get, I don't think it's a great thing that all the young people aren't drinking at all. I think there is something good about the social mingling when you're young enough to handle it. But I'd say once a week, even for young people, is probably too much. So there you go. Alcohol talk. Sweet 1776. I never tried cocaine because I was afraid I'd like it. Yeah, more or less me too. Well, my dad's frame was good. It was, the ones that kill your ego, try those, he said. Go with the mushrooms, and you only have to try LSD once. He's like, it's not a habit thing, it's too crazy. And weed's not really like an ego thing, I guess. And the alcohol, he said, is one of the worst for ego, and cocaine is just so fake and stupid because of the ego thing. He goes, no matter what, if you take cocaine, you sound like an idiot. And I didn't really need it, like the way I chat on the show with all of you, I was always kind of that way, going to bars. I don't need alcohol to socialize at a party or anything like that. I'm pretty much the same person. And you want to talk about, the British Crown or kayfabe or Bitcoin, I don't really need drinks to have a 5-hour conversation about that kind of stuff. And I've kind of been that way most of my life. So there you go. That Diablo 4 DLC came out 6 Texas time yesterday. I bought a 6-pack, was ready, drank 2, went to bed at 9. Getting old. Yeah, exactly. Ripple was always the COD for a lush, a bum on Bowery Street, just so you know. It was always code for a lush, a bum on, or was that so? A bum on Bowery, yeah. Just so you know. I didn't know that. It was code for a lush. A Ripple is a low-cost wine. I never tried it. I am naturally high. Found God at an early age, says JJ Fox. Very comfy in my skin. I'm a rare bird. Most are lost and confused and prone to try something to help. Yeah, exactly. When Nolan went to Asia, he hit the booze and the bitches. Life of the karaoke party guy. She don't like. Yeah. I know where the panel was. Good call. Can anyone share a link to Nolan's talk? Can't find it yet. I'm not sure they do. I'm not sure the Whale Lounge or the Deep, it's called, that stage. If you're looking for the Aaron Redwig talk, it's on the stage called the Deep, but I'm not sure that's broadcast live. I believe years ago, anyway, when I was more in tune with the content at Bitcoin Magazine and the release schedule, that stuff used to come out in the days after the event. So they might have changed it. I have no idea if it was all out live or not. Unsure. But we had fun. It was a good session. What are folks in YouTube saying before I get to the fake news? Good morning, Shai Lathel. Good morning, BTC Maxis. Jesus is king. The sun is up. Bitcoin is running, and I still own no XRP. Come on, it's not working on you. Come on. Good morning, all. Good morning, Vietnam. Eastside Tony in the house. Nice to see you, Eastside Tony. Hope you're doing well. Good morning, Tram. No cocaine, me ever. Knew I'd be dead based upon my addictive tendency. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, lots of people in that way. Lots of people. I just didn't want to do it. Just not interested. And then something in my, what do you do? You know, get out of here. All right, everyone. Indeed, we got a sunrise. We got Bitcoin running. We're at how many thousands of trash tokens? 76,927 US trash tokens per Bitcoin. Let me have a sip of coffee and tell you how the NPCs are doing. It's not good. Things are not going well. All right. First up today, we got this. This is what's happening. No, that's not my thing. This is better. There we go. Weathered emotions. Being informed about climate change is important, even when it comes with a cost. Can or should mental health join the climate crisis conversation? Polluted air, lack of food and nutrients, and rising temperatures are all signs of climate change that can result in long-term mental health effects. But what about eco-anxieties felt in the moment? A study from Quinnipiac University found 95% of the 305 students surveyed acknowledged that climate change is real and were more likely to think about how they are or will be affected in their lifetimes. Guys, the students just voted on climate change. If you don't believe it, you lose. They had a vote, a bunch of students, 305 students. They were surveyed. It was a survey. It's proof. It's happening. In addition to academic stress, career uncertainty, and other worldly fears, the study emphasizes undergraduates' vulnerabilities to eco-anxieties, and I, for one, feel I have fallen victim. There you go. I worry that when I go back home to Oregon, I will find more natural lands taken over by housing developments. Is that really climate change? I worry that every sweltering summer, more wildfires are to follow. I worry I'm contributing more to the fossil fuel problem by living in Southern California than by living in nearly any other region. The list goes on. So this person's stressed out about where they live. Oh, shit. I'm in Las Vegas. Could you believe how many emissions are being released while I'm here? While I'm here consuming? Jeez Louise. I'm depressed. Oh, no. We get this. Oh, guys, you're not going to believe it. Guys, 60 countries are meeting and they're phasing out fossil fuels, right? So 60 countries are going to phase out fossil fuels, but they're excluding the U.S. Oh, stupid U.S. The Trump administration was not invited to the gathering in Santa Marta, Colombia. What a complete slight. The White House spokeswoman called the green transition destructive. They weren't invited to Santa Marta, Colombia. They weren't invited. Hold on. My wife is calling. Let me just see what's up. I always answer when I'm traveling. 1 second. Oh, we're good. She just forgot. So there you go, guys. Can you believe it? The fucking poor White House was not invited to Santa Marta, Colombia. And they're doing without it. Stupid US. You're not even invited to the cool parties anymore. You suck. Losers. This is great too. The Atlantic has it right? Something, they say, is happening to America's moral code. Something's happening, right? And Mark Andreessen says, what could it be? What could that cause be? Unfortunately, we'll never know. It'll be a mystery, like Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster. We can't figure it out. What's going on in America? Moral code lost. Where is it? No one knows. This is really great. This is one of my favorite ones. This is from the New York Times. Suspect, guys, back on the shooting question. Suspect is said to have written of anger at Trump officials. He's said to have. They couldn't check that. No time. The New York Times, he's said to have, right? He's just said to have, right? People said that he was to have spoken and written of anger, right? The armed man who breached security in a dinner attended by president did not mention him by name, according to a note that law enforcement officials attributed to the suspect. Guys, Trump, how dare he assume that the assassin was after him? How dare he? Look at that Trump. He thinks everything revolves around him, right? Said to him. He could have been talking about anyone, this guy. What is Trump going on about? What is this guy going on about? It's always fun seeing Oz Perlman show up here. I don't know if you guys know, but I booked him in 2016 for Consensus, and he was one of our entertainment acts at these events. And it's neat that he's such a neat guy, such an interesting person. So he was just the right person to be in that picture at the right time, I think, and added a certain level of interest to it all for me. Suspect, again, is said to have. It's just a rumor, guys. We'll find out if we can confirm. And this is my favorite one of the day, also from the New York Times. Are you guys ready? This one is sometimes some of these NPC news stories come along that are just top shelf. And this one here is in a world of its own. Guys, meet the new leader of the free world. It's Zelensky. Guys, he's the leader. What happened there? Why is this happening like this? He's the leader of the... What just happened to this? Jeez Louise. What is going on? Well, anyway, you guys saw it for a second, I guess. Rewind the tape. I don't know why this is not loading. Let me reload it. Oh, there we go. The new leader of the free world, guys. He's getting invited to Santa Marta, Colombia, right? They're getting invited. Not even Trump. What a loser, right? We got the new leader of the free world, the Ukrainian president, guys. Things are going great. He's doing awesome. Speaking of free world, again, I was talking about the swiping of bottles. We found out who swiped them. It's the free world, guys. The leader of the free world. It's the ambassador to Ukraine, from Ukraine to the United States, who swiped the bottles. It's the free world. Things are free. Don't you get it? You just take the bottles. It's fine, right? There she is. Do you know who swiped the champagne and wine from the table in the midst of the chaos and the assassination attempt on Trump? They say it was Olga Stefanishina, former Ukrainian Minister of Justice and current ambassador to the U.S. So I don't know if this is true, but it's the leader of the free world. Free stuff, get your free stuff. It's perfect. Perfect. And our last one of the day. This one is excellent. Lots of people having a good laugh about this. I have to reshare because there's some audio. Now, when I told you that the audits and all of that story was going to create a nonstop funnel of storylines and content, and it would be months and months and months of the audit stuff happening pretty much straight through the midterms and 2026. But I didn't know just how funny it was going to get. And here, the target of a lot of these audits, Ilhan Omar, gives us a little bit of an update on the prosecution and persecution of herself. And you wouldn't believe it, but it's been going on.
Last time the Alien Enemies Act was invoked, it was used to detain and deport German, Japanese, Italian immigrants during World War XI. II. Sorry.
War 11, guys. We've had trouble. It's been going on since the future. Here, Matt Walsh reminds us, consider the astronomical levels of stupidity on display here. Lanimar doesn't know how to read Roman numerals, and she thinks there have been 11 world wars. Either one of these would be reasonable justification to remove her from office and send her back to Somalia, but both. So people are having some fun with Ilhan Omar saying we had World War 11 yesterday. So thank you, Ilhan Omar. I knew the audit stuff was going to be great. I didn't know we'd be getting quality NPC content like this. So every day that we don't have enough of Brian Stelter and Washington Post is changing. So it's not easy to find NPC content. But then Ilhan Omar comes out with World War 11, and we're all saved. We're all saved. We're going to live. We're going to live, everyone. We've survived a lot of wars. Don't worry, World War III is long gone. We're at 11. We're at 11 now. You wouldn't believe what happened. It's crazy. A lot of fun. So indeed, watching Ilhan Omar talk about World War 11, watching all of this media stuff go on over the past few days with the assassination attempt on Trump, and oops, something went wrong. That's what I wanted. We had this comment from Fugitive Caesar about all of these stories and craziness over the past couple of days with the assassination attempt. Fugitive Caesar had a really good take. He says, we are never going back to normal because the post-World War II boomer era is finished, and it was built on broadcast media's ability to drive a top-down, one-way monoculture. Everything since 1945 will be renegotiated piece by piece: marriage, DEI, tariffs, immigration, etc. What have I been saying for a long time now? This is exactly one of the frames of this show. We've been talking about the top-down narrative structure, the way Fiat works. We've been talking about the fault tolerance of the system of the World War II consensus. Since the Nigel Heil Hitler story from last year, it's been very clear the World War II consensus model is broken. I had that fun whiteboard that I created on it last summer. It's been one of the frameworks that we've been talking about here for years, this top-down media structure, how it's funded, why it works the way it works. It's really the point of what we're talking about here. And this idea here, indeed, of renegotiating all of our history. And I think it'll go deeper than that. I think we're going to renegotiate our I'm back. We're going to renegotiate our understanding of World War II. We're going to renegotiate our understanding of World War I. We're already well down that road of reinterpreting World War I. Civil War, the U.S. Revolutionary War, we're reinterpreting probably, and I've said this for a long time, right back to antediluvian history. We're going to be reinterpreted. That's why when I say the news is fake, but wait till you get a load of history, because history gets reinterpreted every generation, every one of these eras. So it's normal that we don't really know. There's no, true version of history. History gets remolded and readapted every era in order to fit our own worldview. And so that process is beginning, and we're seeing that top-down news structure collapse entirely. And this understanding of Fiat and how the news cycles are created, how propaganda is funded, how the whole system uses this incentive structure, this top-down incentive structure, in order to hypnotize, spellbind. It is the entire point of what we do here every morning. We look into those things. And so it's important that you pay attention when we are looking at both financial analysis. That's why we prefer the frame of looking at the incentives and following the money in order to understand the news, if you will, because the news, as it is, the media entities that produce the news, are so baked into the incentives of the fiat system, they can't be trusted. So the best way to understand what's going on is to look at the financial incentives and the money and see how things flow. It's what we've been doing here every morning with the Iran war. It's what we do all the time, contrasting the Bitcoin culture to the fiat culture. And that's why this story indeed is important, because as we're renegotiating this top-down media structure, as we're trying to understand the world, you see these examples. Here's Luke Gromen. And again, I know a lot of Bitcoiners like Luke. I know a lot of Bitcoiners found him along their Bitcoin journey. But here he is again, sharing a Atlantic article. Now, of all the news outlets that are fake, The Atlantic is the worst. That's why they're one of the stars of NPC News. Here he is contemplating, The Atlantic, Vance doubts the Pentagon's depiction of the Iran war. The vice president is worried that the U.S. is running low on weapons. And you've got all these writers, and you've got Luke Gromen. Tom Luongo reminds us, Luke taking anything published by The Atlantic as anything other than the worst form of agitprop is the most revealing thing on my X feed today. I believe the same thing that Tom Luongo believes in this case. This shows his hand. I mean, if you're now at the point in the Iran war where you're using The Atlantic, like a picture tweet of The Atlantic, and that's your argument, you realize that you're not really in the world of following the money, understanding financial flows anymore. This is probably ego. I don't know. I can't mind read Luke. I don't know what's going on in his head. This is just, to me, a sign that his worldview is just not holding. And he's grasping to The Atlantic now to buttress and support the worldview. But it is thin gruel indeed, and Tom Luongo has it completely right. So I'm putting Luke Gromen in the same category as the Tucker Carlsons of the world at this point. He's not someone who's really looking at the financial flows anymore. He's not really doing the follow the money analysis of what's going on in the war. If you want to do that, you'd be talking about Scott Bessent here, because Scott Bessent and Rubio yesterday had a lot to say about the war, and a lot of it really does tell, I think, the story. Now, I understand that they're part of the administration, so of course they have talking points, but I do believe that the financial pinch that you hear Bessent discussing here is one of the major incentives and the major frames you need to follow the money and understand what's going on with this Iran war. Because indeed it is now, in Luke's defense, it is a surreal war because there isn't a lot of reporting. I was talking with a bunch of people that I know, a lot of my friends from Dubai are here. So I have a lot of on the ground cues right now, clues about what's actually going on there. I've heard all kinds of my friends say, yeah, there was rockets that came in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. We saw one here, we saw one there. We can't share it on social media. We get in trouble when we're there. But we were never that worried. I was there the whole time. It does, people left. So that's the bigger story in Dubai, is that it's a little empty compared to normal. Not majorly empty, just a lot of the Americans in particular have left. A lot of the Indians and Pakistanis and all those people are still there. So it's not like empty or anything. But the thing that I noticed about Dubai that was different in this era, because I've been 6 times in the past 2 years, I go sort of every couple of months. And the thing that I noticed about it over the past 2 years, the thing that I really recognized as one of the changes in Dubai from previous eras, that whole era that I was describing about when I was drinking and living in Asia, at the time, the most beautiful and successful foreigners in Asia were all in Hong Kong. Now, I've been to Hong Kong a bunch in the past couple of years, from before 2019 and after 2019, and I can tell you all those beautiful foreigners all moved to Dubai. So those are mostly probably the people who are not around, and so that's true, right? But nevertheless, going back to this idea of it is a surreal war. So the best we can do is look at the financial flows and look at how the money is shaping up, how the financial story is shaping up, how do we follow the money to sort of understand what's going there. So Bessent says yesterday, while the surviving IRGC leaders are trapped like drowning rats in a sewage pipe, Iran's creaking oil industry is starting to shut in production thanks to the U.S. blockade. Pumping will soon collapse. Gasoline shortages in Iran next. And indeed, here, Bessent also says, doing business with sanctioned Iranian airlines risks exposure to U.S. sanctions. Foreign governments should take all actions necessary to ensure that companies in their jurisdictions do not provide services to those aircraft, including the provision of jet fuel, catering, landing fees, and maintenance. Under economic fury, the U.S. will impose maximum pressure on Iran and not hesitate to act on any third parties that facilitate conduct between the business Iranian entities. So the noose is definitely tightening. I think walls are closing in. I understand it's a retarded frame, often abused in the Trump case. But it does look like it here. Zineb Rubia, who again I think has been one of the best on the entire question of Iran and following the money, says Rubio and Bessent's statements today on Iran. So Rubio also discussed time and what the timing looks like in Iran. She says here they're very revealing. Three things stand out. Operation Economic Fury, sanctions, listings, etc., was launched at the same time as the military blockade, which means Washington is very much in the business of suffocating the IRGC and forcing them to confront an economic situation that was already catastrophic going into negotiations. They've spent decades financing proxies instead of taking care of the Iranian population, and now the bill is coming due while they're trying to talk. Rubio said they're buying time, and a bit earlier, Bessent pointed out that the IRGC is resorting to cooking oil and that Iran's creaking oil industry is starting to shut in production thanks to the U.S. blockade. Pumping will soon collapse, so they're buying time politically, but practically and militarily, they've run out of options, and the longer they drag their feet on negotiations, the harder they get hit. 3, no one is really talking about this, but the administration has been very aggressive on China lately, and they can afford to be because China depends on the Strait of Hormuz too, and has so far done nothing to push Iran toward concessions, perhaps because it cannot. IRGC leadership is so scattered. Beijing walks into its meeting with Trump in a few weeks from a weakened position. Now, what I've been saying about the Iran war, and this was something that's been on my mind lately, but I was articulating it yesterday because talking with all these people at the event, they'll ask, when is the Iranian war going to end? My frame now is that it was over on day one when the Chinese and the Russians didn't escalate. Once that happened, the war was effectively over because the only worry was the escalation that China and Russia would have brought to the theater of war with Iran. When they didn't do that, that was more or less the timer, and the choke points now with money and the flow of oil are probably enough to slowly collapse what's left. And the targeted strikes on IRGC, which I think are going to come, are a big part of the story. So that's why the real story of the American position in this war is reflected in what's going on with China. Because America, if they're being so aggressive with China, and they are, setting themselves up for the meeting in a couple of weeks with Xi, that formula is, I think, the most telling part of what is actually going on in the war, because that really tells you what the people who matter are seeing, not the fucking influencers online and the Luke Gromans about the energy and the what's going on with the weapons. All of that's bullshit, right? What is important and what is relevant is seeing how these negotiations between China and America are getting set up, and they tell the story, I think, of what's really going on. And you can see here that Adam Townsend doing this big deep dive into the 8 countries on the Belt and Road path and all the trouble that the Belt and Road has caused internationally for China. And that's why you start seeing here the South China Post publishing this today. Why experts say, I found this from the Experts Say investigation or search that I was doing for NPC News. But right there, you can see experts say trade wins aren't enough for Xi-Trump summit in May. They're saying that it's diplomatic malpractice for the lack of preparation for meeting that could hollow out the potential for productive talks. So I think this scenario here tells you everything you need to know, because the United States is moving aggressively around the world and is probably in great position when the meeting with Xi happens in May. And that is ultimately one of the big lenses into what's going on in the war. If America didn't have the kind of leverage they're going to be able to prove in a couple of weeks with China, then you would know the situation in Iran was what Luke Roman is saying it is. I believe that because China and Russia had no capacity to retaliate and escalate, or even influence what's going on in Iran, by forcing them into peace, you get a pretty good sense of the real story that's going on here, because the real story that's going on here is separate from that. It's all about what America is doing, not just in Iran, but you have to follow the money around the world. You have to look at how aggressively the American system is moving against China, against Europe, against all of these recalibrations that we're seeing around the world with America at the center. And one of the big parts, of course, is the dollar dominance question. That's why, and this is most relevant to China, that's why this investigation here by Amuse about Bessent and dollar domination, first of all, fits exactly the frame we've been using here on the show. I told you many times that all of the fiat Ponzi's around the world are getting rolled into the US dollar, that we're going to a global bimetallic state of US dollars for consumption while they absorb all of the inflation from the other fiat Ponzi's that are getting unwound, bring it into the US dollar for a generation, let's say. I don't know how long it'll last. I have no idea. Probably not that long. I don't see this bimetallism thing lasting 80 years or anything like that. But here we are, we're seeing the model. I don't think enough people are talking about what Secretary Bessent accomplished in Argentina with the dollar swap. Even fewer people are talking about the fact that he's expanding the program globally. This is huge. This is why Canada, Mexico, Venezuela, everyone, Japan, they're all about to be dollarized, all of them. And America's allies will be within this new dollar system, which is not the same dollar that it's not the Federal Reserve note. This is something else. Here, killing the petro yuan. Secretary Bessent turned Argentina into a template for dollar dominance. For 50 years, the dollar has been the operating system of global finance, and for 50 years, our adversaries have been trying to write a competing one. The decisive question of the 2020s is whether they will succeed. Until April 2022, 2026, the honest answer was that Washington had no coherent strategy for stopping them. Treasury Secretary Bessent has now supplied one. In testimony before the Senate Appropriations Subcommittee on Financial Services and General Government, and in subsequent statements on X, Bessent confirmed that many Gulf states and numerous Asian allies have requested permanent dollar swap facilities with the United States, and that Treasury intends to respond by building, in the exact phrasing, new U.S. dollar funding centers in the Gulf and Asia. This is the most consequential reorientation of U.S. international monetary policy since the 1971 Nixon shock, and the legacy press has done its usual job of obscuring why. The mechanics matter, because confusion surrounding them is the principal political vulnerability of the strategy. A swap line is not a loan and is not a bailout. It is a contractually bounded currency exchange in which a foreign central bank delivers a deposit of its own currency to Treasury for the Federal Reserve and receives an equivalent dollar deposit, with both parties committing to reverse the trade at a specific future date and at the exact same exchange rate. The foreign central bank pays interest on the dollar borrowing. The U.S. holds the foreign currency as collateral for the duration. Counterparty risk sits at the central bank level, not the commercial bank level. The structure is so conservative that the Federal Reserve swap operations, including peak utilization of roughly 585 billion U.S. trash tokens during the 2008 crisis and 450 billion during the 2020 crisis, have generated no documented losses to U.S. taxpayers across the major episodes examined in the academic finance literature. As Bessent told Congress in defending the Argentina arrangement, in most bailouts, you don't make money. The U.S. government made money. What Bessent is now doing is taking the demonstrated playbook and scaling it into the central instrument of 21st century American economic statecraft. The strategic logic, which Bessent has stated plainly, runs as follows. Additional swap lines, in his words, can benefit our nation by reinforcing dollar usage and liquidity internationally, maintaining smooth functioning in dollar funding markets, promoting trade and investment with the United States, and in hypothetical stress scenarios, preventing disorderly scales of U.S. assets. He went further and named the actual game. Dollar dominance and reserve currency status are strengthened by constant long-term initiatives, including countering the growth of problematic alternative payment systems. Translation for those who do not speak treasury: this is about killing the petro-yuan in its cradle. To see why this matters, consider the architecture Beijing has spent the last decade methodically constructing. The People's Bank of China has established more than 40 bilateral yuan swap arrangements with foreign central banks. The cross-border interbank payment system, China's parallel to SWIFT, has expanded continuously through 2025, connecting thousands of indirect participants and reaching well over 100 countries and regions. The M-Bridge cross-border central bank digital currency project, in which Saudi Arabia is a participant, provides yuan-denominated settlement rails that bypass SWIFT entirely. The Council on Foreign Relations argued in March 2026 that rising cross-border yuan payments may be weakening a key U.S. sanctions tool, and a March 2026 House Select Committee investigation documented that China has effectively become the clearing market for sanctioned oil from Iran, Russia, and Venezuela. Iran's 25-year cooperation agreement with Beijing routes a substantial majority of Iranian oil exports through yuan-denominated channels, often processed by smaller Chinese refineries to obscure the trade flows. Venezuela has settled the bulk of its oil exports to China outside the dollar system since 2018. The Russia, China, Iran, Venezuela, Cuba axis is not a coincidence, and it is not a fringe alliance. It is a deliberately constructed parallel financial system, and Xi Jinping's previously private 2024 instructions, since published in the Communist Party's flagship ideological journal, Kuishi, direct officials to build a strong currency widely used in international trade and foreign exchange, with a powerful central bank capable of attracting investment and influencing global pricing. A serious analyst would not overstate this. Peterson Institute analysis in May 2025 argued persuasively that Chinese alternatives are significant but not systemic, meaningful as safety valves for sanctioned actors and political hedgers, but still too small, too fragmented, and too institutionally constrained to rival the full dollar system in the near term. SWIFT data confirms the scale problem, the yuan. So he goes on, Bessent's swap line strategy is precisely that answer. Consider what an expanded permanent swap facility with the UAE actually does. The UAE holds approximately 285 billion US trash tokens in foreign reserves, a net international investment position of roughly 1 trillion positive, and sovereign wealth funds totaling more than 2 trillion US trash tokens. The dirham is pegged to the dollar. Defending that peg in normal times requires reliable dollar inflows from oil exports. In 2026, Iran war, which began with the February strikes on the Iranian nuclear infrastructure and accelerated with Iran's March 4th closure of the Strait of Hormuz, compressed those inflows dramatically. Brent crude pushed past 120 US trash tokens a barrel. Qatar Energy declared force majeure on all exports, and collective Saudi, Emirati, Kuwaiti, and Iraqi production dropped by roughly 10 million barrels per day at the peak. UAE Central Bank Governor Khalid Mohammed Balama raised the swap line proposal directly with Bessent and the Federal Reserve officials at the spring meetings in Washington, and UAE officials told the Wall Street Journal that a binary alternative was clear. Either the United States provides the dollar backstop, or the Emirates begin pricing oil sales and other transactions in yuan. As one prominent macro strategist warned in April 2026, the conflict could be remembered as a key catalyst in erosion of petrodollar dominance and the beginnings of the petro-yuan. This is the inflection point that Bessent has correctly identified and acted upon. A permanent dollar swap facility with Abu Dhabi accomplishes several things simultaneously. It eliminates the partner's incentive to ever experiment with yuan settlement at scale. Because dollar liquidity becomes guaranteed in perpetuity, it also deepens the UAE-US financial integration to the point where the Emirates' substantial US investment commitments become self-reinforcing rather than fragile. It signals to every other Gulf monarchy that dollar primacy is a club with permanent membership benefits, not a Cold War-era arrangement that might be revoked. It creates, in Bessent's exact words, the new US dollar funding centers in Gulf and Asia, meaning that even when New York is closed, dollar liquidity remains globally available through partner and central banks. The Federal Reserve's own staff research has stated the operational logic directly, that swap lines and the related repo facility have enhanced the standing of the dollar as the dominant global currency because approved users that in a crisis have access to a stable source of dollar funding. So indeed, the fiscal stakes are considerable, And a reasonable reader will ask, how can we be confident the operational risk is low? The Argentina template provides the answer. Congressional research documents that Treasury announced a $200 billion swap line financed through the Exchange Stabilization Fund in October 2025, that Argentina drew 2.5 billion US trash tokens against the facility through the end of October, and that operation was deployed to stabilize the peso ahead of the midterm legislative elections critical to Malay's reform agenda. So just like he said that this was a club that you can be a part of and that there are benefits of being in this club, you can see this now extending throughout the world in other actions. It's one of the main reasons why Argentina, who has the swap line, in the same way that UAE will have the swap line in order to maintain this alliance with the United States and to be part of this economic zone that is being created, why it's important that UAE is a Bitcoin holder and all of these places are moving in the direction they are, because that club is now expressing itself even in territorial things, not just in Iran. What we see here in Argentina is exactly that case again with the Malvinas Islands. The Malvinas Islands, of course, claimed by the British, but you're seeing here, again, the only way to really understand what's happening in the world, you look at Iran, you look at what who America was really trying to pinch, who was not getting oil, it was Europe and UK. He let the oil go to China. He let the Russian oil into the markets. And here now the United States supporting Argentina when it comes to what the sledge people call the Falkland Islands, but what are really called the Malvinas Islands. And here it is not a coincidence that the USS Nimitz carrier strike group arrived in Argentinian waters just hours after the US declared its neutrality in the Falkland Islands, also known as the Malvinas Islands dispute. President Milei's emergency decree brought the American Armada to Argentina for the Pass X naval exercises. Is Trump sending Starmer a message? Could be. It's looking more and more like this new world that's being created out of US dollar swap lines, the unwinding of all of these fiat Ponzi's into the US dollar, with Bitcoin as a part of the new credibility of US debt, is really, again, about getting away from all of this old architecture that came from this World War II top-down structure, because it's what funded all of the brainwashing. And so the war really is between these entities, and that's why you need to understand the finance to understand what's going on. And that's why this image makes so much sense if you're understanding the Iran war, the Malvinas Islands question. That's why yesterday when King Charles arrived in America, he did so to the anthem of the United States, not England. So you're seeing here, I'm going to play it so you get the audio. And here is the, no, what is this? Why does it do this sometimes? Hide. There we go. This one is excellent. So this is King Charles arriving at the airport in America. Welcome, King. Don't take your shoes off. So That's how he arrived. And here we find out from Susan Kokinda, the great Susan Kokinda, who we love their content. So here she is describing the true nature of the King of England and the crown. And in this video, you discover that Queen Elizabeth, for example, was receiving all kinds of intelligence briefings. She was an agent. She was a deep state agent. She was heavily versed in what MI6 was doing. They've been heavily involved with the deep state intelligence community and are an apparatus, an organ of the deep state intelligence community, not a figurehead of any sorts, part of statecraft, part of this entire business of spies and manipulating people and psychological projection and the entire top-down Fiat structure. Again, the Fiat structure, which is this top-down system that uses money and the flow of communications in this order in order to hypnotize and persuade people. Here she is describing exactly what that relationship is.
Empire knows what's at stake. Here's what Reuters is counting on. King Charles on U.S. mission to bolster UK's special relationship with royalist Trump. They're counting on the continuation of the soft power relationship that the monarchy has cultivated with presidents for 70 years. Like the one Susan Page, the author of the just published book, The Queen and Her Presidents, The Hidden Hand That Shaped History, describes. She says, on her first trip to the United States as a sovereign, Queen Elizabeth II so charmed President Dwight Eisenhower that she managed to mend a breach between their two countries over the 1956 Suez Crisis. Now, Suez was the last time a U.S. president seriously and openly challenged the empire. When France and Britain moved to seize the canal in 1956, Eisenhower told them to stop, and he threatened to crash the British pound. They stopped. And it was the moment Britain discovered it no longer had independent power, and it had to rely on manipulating the United States instead. From then on, it relied on soft power to direct the United States. And Page's new book makes clear that it was Queen Elizabeth herself who wielded that power. Here's Page's description in a recent interview.
So almost every day she would get briefing papers. Every week she would get top secret intelligence documents. And so over the period of decades, she was as informed about intelligence issues around the world as any other person, for over a longer period of time than any leader, and even over issues, say, contingency plans for a nuclear war.
This is not a figurehead. Queen Elizabeth got top secret intelligence briefings every day for 70 years. She was in on the nuclear war contingency plans, and you can bet she had the full take on the Five Eyes intelligence operation. And she used it. Page describes how the personal relationship between Elizabeth and Ronald Reagan contributed to Reagan's decision to support Great Britain in the Malvinas Islands crisis with Argentina, despite opposition from some of his advisors. Elizabeth was heeding Winston Churchill's advice, quote, stay close to the Americans, unquote. And it worked until Donald Trump came to town. And again, in that PBS interview, Page spills the beans.
You report that a senior British official described the Queen wearing the Obama brooch on the day of President Trump's arrival as a silent act of resistance. That is a striking claim for a monarch who has really studied in neutrality.
A rare example of that. But this was a brooch that Michelle Obama had given her. She had worn it only once, and that was for the reciprocal dinner with the Obamas. For 7 years, she had not been seen in public. Then on the day that President Trump arrives in England, she is in a formal meeting with some religious leaders, and she's wearing it. And I think those close to her told me there was no other way to interpret that, but to interpret it as a statement of resistance to Trump and a statement of support for President Obama, with whom she was actually quite close.
The next day, during that visit to London, President Trump broke royal etiquette and walked ahead of the Queen. This is the backstory that you have to remember while you watch the pomp and circumstance over the next several days. Because soft power and ceremony is not going to undo the hard power which Donald Trump has taken to the British-created post-war liberal order, and the House of Lords just admitted it. Last week, Chatham House premiered a new report published by the British House of Lords International Relations and Defense Committee entitled Adjusting to New Realities.
Wait until you hear this fucking Lord mouth breather. Wait until you hear this fucking scumbag. I saw in the chat people are annoyed by Ilhan Omar's voice. It's Ilhan Omar, she needs her like tongue, I don't know, some kind of reduction or something. It sounds like she's just choking on her own tongue in her mouth. She's got too much tongue or something. And wait till you hear this next guy. He's even more annoying when he speaks in his ridiculous British accent and mouth breathes the whole time. Imagine you're trying to be like a pompous, posh British guy, but you're a fucking mouth breather. Imagine you have Queen's English accent, but you're a mouth breather. Wait until you hear this mouth breather guy. It's unreal.
Rebalancing the UK-US partnership. Now, that committee is chaired by Lord Robertson, who was the former NATO General Secretary.
Yeah, mouth breather.
And it includes Lord Kim Durock, whose relationship to Donald Trump tells you everything. Then Sir Kim Durock was Britain's ambassador to Washington in Trump's first term until 2019,
like an actual
when his cables calling the Trump administration inept and insecure were leaked. Those cables also boasted of the networks he cultivated in Washington as he flooded the zone with anti-Trump policies. Trump demanded his removal, and he resigned. 4 months later, the British establishment made him a lord. Now he's on the committee figuring out how to manage relations with the Trump-led United States. And at the Chatham House panel releasing the House of Lords report, Durock made clear what was at stake. First, he described how Britain depends on the post-war order.
There is, as Lord Robertson said in his introduction, a US retreat from what is commonly called the rules-based international order, which broadly defined is the system of institutions and rules set up after the Second World War to manage relations between states, to promote prosperity and to prevent conflict. And as a medium-sized power with an open economy,
he needs a Mike Tyson
and a history of supporting free trade, we in the UK have found that system has suited us well, but it looks to us that increasingly Americans are taking a different view.
Suited us quite well. That's an understatement. And in the House of Lords report itself, Lord MacDonald made clear that that system, which suits the British quite well, doesn't work without the United States. He said, there is no credible law without effective enforcement. And on the international stage, there is no effective enforcement without the United States. Then, back to Lord Durock, he delivered the indictment that it is Donald Trump's United States which has abandoned this post-war architecture.
There's also, one could argue, and Lord Robertson again mentioned this in his introduction, a quite clear disdain for, disregard for international law, as demonstrated recently by the military actions in Venezuela and Iran. And in some ways, American foreign policy seems to be moving back to an older tradition that is more nationalist.
That older, more nationalistic tradition was last fully exercised when William McKinley was president. The fear that this is going to become permanent runs through every page of the report. If Trump has 2 more years to consolidate, the change may be irreversible. They are racing the clock, and they know it. So while you're watching the pomp and circumstance this week, remember this. The monarchy was never a figurehead. It was a fully intelligence-briefed operation tasked with protecting the post-war order. The hidden hand isn't really hidden anymore. Donald Trump is dismantling that order, and no amount of soft power or ceremony is going to change that. And as the president said after the assassination attempt, it's the ones who are most impactful and who change history that they go after. Promethean Action understands that, and we understand that Donald Trump can't do.
So there you go. And even, 1 second. Lots of talking. So even the Obama connection with the brooch, as the PBS sludge person World War XI was letting you know, even with the brooch and the Obamas and the subtle signal sent by the Queen. Well, here's a not so subtle signal. Here's MBS, the greatest American ally of this era, telling you what Obama really is. And here he comes out and says that Barack Obama is the world's #1 sponsor of terror. He says he gave Iran 150 billion US trash tokens in cash, and the IRGC didn't even build a single street with that money. Instead, Iran used the money to make missiles and drones, finance proxies, and arm terror organizations Hamas, Ansar Allah, and Hezbollah. With these funds, Iran offers safe harbor to the leaders of al-Qaeda, including one of Osama bin Laden's sons, who was indoctrinated into jihadism. Barack Obama was responsible for the Arab Spring in 2010, which deliberately created ISIS, toppling the Libyan government in 2011 and creating a nuclear Iran. The Obama syndicate, including the Chief of Staff John Brennan, Hillary Clinton, Valerie Jarrett, Victoria Nuland, Susan Rice, and Samantha Power, did so deliberately in order to keep the region destabilized and to use Iran as a buffer to prevent the Gulf states and Israel from amassing too much power. Now, President Trump is undoing everything Obama touched, foreign and domestic. One man has managed to all of this, orchestrating the single largest conspiracy in U.S. to overthrow the United States government, and not a single investigation. But indeed, we are at that point. We are in the season of accountability, and you're getting signs. Oh no, what just happened there? Okay. Oh no, hold on. Let me find, something went wrong just now with a page that I had. Let me think of who it was. I think it was Pierre Rochard. Yes, it was indeed Pierre Rochard. Just give me a second. I don't know why it got erased. Oh no, he might have completely erased it. I think he might have erased that tweet within the time. I think he might have completely erased it. Well, hold on. I got to find this because you do need to see. He had a Bitcoin connection to the Uranium One question. Well, anyway, uranium. There was stuff released by Chuck Grassley yesterday about Uranium One. And again, it fits with my frame that the season of accountability is here. Pierre Rochard had an interesting take, because there's a Bitcoin relation to this, because the fella named in this document, one of the people named in this document, is connected to virulent anti-Bitcoin craziness. And Pierre Rochard made that connection, but the guy had was in the thread already and must have threatened Pierre or something. Anyway, Pierre has taken it down apparently. But here's what we know. Wow, the new release from Chuck Grassley on the Clinton Foundation is a staggering 91-page treasure trove. I just skimmed it all, and it is all there. Uranium One, Russia, Boeing, Haiti, Hillary's brother, and all the other stuff. And the FBI did not even open a full investigation, whereas with Trump, they had one false tip about barroom gossip, and 3 months earlier, and they immediately launched a full enterprise investigation. Absolute travesty that Comey struck Atkinson, who shows up here as well, and others have not been held to account. But again, part of the season of accountability is getting everyone scratching walls in order for the accountability to happen. And again, going back to this idea of accountability, but tie it into financial flows, tie it into this top-down structure. What you see is this edifice coming apart. The ability of the legacy media to coherently fight against the accountability that's coming is now gone. You're starting to see, just as the fiat structure is loosening and weakening, and America and Britain, and they're having their issues, the Federal Reserve getting subsumed by the Treasury, the reissuance of credible public debt, because we're going to have the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve as part of the new issuance of dollars, and the bit bonds and government debt being funded through these new mechanisms. You're seeing the propaganda get more and more unhinged. And one of the examples here is this video from Jimmy Kimmel. So I don't have a problem with the joke, just like Stephen Miller says here. It's fine, the widow joke, blah, 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 blah. It's got everyone's attention. Trump has talked about it. Melania has talked about it. What is crazy is just look at this video and you realize it's all fake, right? He's not at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. He's splicing images here of Melania in the crowd to make it look like it's a real thing. But what it shows more, indeed, is that it is the fact that he did this routine in front of his own audience, where he knew he was going to get promoted clapping, or clapter, is emblematic of what Kimmel has become. It's ego self-affirmation. He literally faked being the host of the White House Correspondents' Dinner. This is kind of fucking weird. Like, he actually got dressed up and did a podium and an entire routine with spliced clips for the event that he had to stage. It's unhealthy, but it's a sign exactly of this top-down information structure coming apart at the seams. And you're seeing the destruction that this kind of fiat propaganda has actually waged on the American mind. Again, the assassination wasn't really an assassination, like I said yesterday. Like, a lot of the Republican people went pretty far. A lot of the MAGA folks went pretty far with their reactions. Tried to kill Trump. Okay, there was a shooter, but it's like, it wasn't a good plan. But just like in the case of Charlie Kirk, where the assassination was successful, the even bigger story is the reaction. And here Eric Weinstein talking about how this has been normalized. The kind of mental illness that you see from Jimmy Kimmel is just everywhere. He says these aren't deranged liberals. These are normalized revolutionaries. We normalized revolutionary thinking. These normalized revolutionaries have jobs, advanced degrees, teaching credentials, mortgages, and responsibilities. This isn't hard to grasp. And these are all these open, mentally ill people just spouting their craziness on the internet. And it's showing you what Fiat has done to the minds of these people. It shows you what the same deep state the Queen is a part of, the same top-down information structures, the same ops that she's a part of. You can start to see what it's done to people's minds. And it's not good.
When my first reaction to hearing the news about Trump's attempt was, it was probably fake. Like, immediately I was like, oh, that wasn't real. Probably fake. And the second was, aw, they missed? So happy they missed. Oh. Yeah, that's
multiple examples of this. There's all kinds of videos today of these people reacting just so crazily. 1 second, I gotta redo all of this. Stop sharing. It doubles up sometimes and it makes me a little confused. But here, just look at the type of media you've seen over the past few months. I mean, this is one of these compilation videos, and you can see how normalized this has become. It's pretty wild.
You need conservatives to be afraid of getting killed when they go to events so that they look to their leadership to turn down the temperature.
Yeah, kill them. Kill those motherfuckers. And murder those motherfuckers in the street. Let the streets soak in their red capitalist blood.
Someone has to do it. See, when I say that, everyone knows exactly what I mean.
I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
Look as his character is stabbed to death.
Our First Lady Melania is here. Look at Melania, so beautiful. Mrs. Trump, you have a glow like an expectant widow.
When they go low, we kick them.
They're still going to have to go out and put a bullet in Donald Trump, and that's a fact.
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
So you, I hold it back here.
Same exact thing. That's it.
Okay.
America deserved 9/11, dude. The guy is a convicted felon or convicted rapist. He's a pedophile. If you cared about Medicare fraud or Medicaid fraud, you would kill Rick Scott.
Besides marching and protesting, what else do you suggest?
Well, it doesn't happen overnight. It's not a miraculous. What did you say? Murder.
And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore.
The biggest terror threat in this country is white men, most of them radicalized right to the right.
So that's it. Every pillar of society, and this is that top-down structure from the left, is radicalizing people to violence. Here's a collection of clips from officials, musicians, actors, comedy hosts, talk shows, streamers, all calling for extreme violence against conservatives. They call to have our streets soaked in the red blood. They are radicalizing normal people into violence, and it's on purpose, and it is coordinated. And here, War Clandestine says, people are perplexed that the shooter seemed to be a somewhat normal guy with an education and a job. As a conservative who's been living near DC for 15 years, this isn't perplexing at all. If you could hear the way leftists talk about Trump and his supporters, especially when they think when there are no Trump supporters around, none of this would surprise you. It's one of the things that I enjoy most about being a Bitcoiner and who I am in politics, but being able to live in intensely blue areas in the way that I do. So living in blue areas, now my county in Vermont is totally red, but that's besides the point. Living in Canada, where you see this stuff every day, is really revealing because no one assumes ever that I'm a Trump supporter or any of these things. They'll just say the craziest shit. And you'll hear it and they don't even flinch. They don't think twice. It's one of the reasons why I think that people, Bitcoiners that have a similar political slant to me, who live in blue states like California or New York, have a special flavor of being a Bitcoiner and understanding these financial flows and the brainwashing and where it all comes from and these pillars that hold up all of the stuff, because we see it more often. We see it every day. We see how these folks can't even imagine they're in the company of people like myself who are working as much as I can to change the system. They just don't even imagine that's the case. That's one of their big weaknesses, right? That is one of the asymmetric advantages that Bitcoiners have, in that when we follow these financial flows, when we understand how this prompt engineering works and how these systems function and operate, this is an asymmetric advantage for us because we understand following the money and incentives give you a better picture of what's going on, and that we can actually start pulling these levers ourselves and mass brainwashing people in reverse to deprogram them. So I think ultimately that is what's happening. So like he says, none of it would surprise you. They actually believe Trump is Hitler. They actually believe violence is justified against Trump and his supporters. This is not some fringe belief, and it is widespread. They openly and unapologetically fantasize about Republican politicians being assassinated, and they're proud of it. You could ask any leftist on the street in DC if they wish for the assassination attempts on Trump to be successful, and they will look you straight in the eye and say absolutely, just like they openly rooted for us to die during COVID. A great sickness infects these people. I don't think those who live outside the cities have any idea just how much these leftists hate you and want you to die. The shooter was not some fringe activist. He's just a regular leftist who acted on the thoughts and conversations that all of them have been conditioned to have due to the 24/7 exposure of anti-Trump propaganda from every bit of the media they consume. They are heavily brainwashed. And that's why this is just totally normal. You see here, Cernovich is one of these examples, right? I'll be with Cernovich tonight. I'll be hanging out with him here, saying people still don't understand. This is Katie Porter yesterday saying the following about Trump and the assassination attempt. Don't know why that's not loading. Anyway, she says something along the lines of "fuck Trump." Say it with me. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's right. Fuck Trump. Together, we're going to kick Trump's ass in November and stop him in his tracks. I'll stand up to Trump and his cronies again and again, just as I did in Congress, with or without my whiteboard. But this election for governor is about far more than defeating Trump. We know that Trump is willing to do, and he's blah, 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 blah. So again, I make my prediction that California is not going to be the same after this. I do believe that with the voting fraud and with this character running for governor, I do believe you're going to see some degree of change over there. And that's why here, this note from Christian Hines saying, kind of what we're seeing yesterday, right? I condemn political violence. It comes from this Hakeem Jeffries video. I'll play that first. Let me reload it. Why are things not working? Just a second. Probably have to start the audio over.
Whether that's the right, the left, or the center is unacceptable. Period. Full stop. The notion that any of us are concerned with so-called criticism from these phony Republicans as it relates to anything that has been said, certainly as it relates to the comment related to maximum warfare everywhere, all the time, in connection with the redistricting battle that Republicans launched. I stand by it. You can continue to criticize me for it. I don't give a damn about your criticism. First of all, that phrase, maximum warfare, everywhere, all the time, came from the White House in the summer of 2025, when they started this redistricting battle.
Redistricting.
Big bang. Why? Because Democrats have decided to finish it. Get lost.
So, first of all, no persuasion. Very pathetic, terrible delivery, low aura, low charisma, zero. He's a zero. This guy sucks. But Christian Hines asks an important question. He says, I condemn political violence, but Republicans are all right-wing extremists, fascists, and traitors to our democracy, almost every Democratic Congress over the last 48 hours. If your political enemies are all fascist traitors, then your condemnation of political violence means nothing, because you've already signaled that such people are to be killed. And if they are simply citizens with bad views, then all the rhetoric of the last 6 years is so out of kilter with reality that you're discrediting yourself by reading it. This unresolved contradiction is the essence of our politics. Liberals want to preserve the appearance of a normal, functioning democracy while constantly invoking the threat of anti-democratic extremism. It's like they all want to say, we're all citizens debating on the best way to achieve the same desired end goal, while also declaring that those who don't agree with them are all enemies of the republic who need to be silenced. That contradiction will not last forever. Either the constant and total moral excommunication by the left will eventually stop, and those people will back down, or the rhetoric about social norms and the rule of law and our democracy will eventually collapse, probably in the public's minds long before the left themselves drop it, because the enemy distinction is real. My money is on the latter. I can't see any world at the moment where the left backs down or de-escalates. Well, the world where that happens comes back to this top-down financial flow propaganda method. This is how it comes to an end. It comes to an end by changing this system, because it is all of the brainwashing and the propaganda that make it possible. So these people will align with power eventually. That's all that matters. Aligning with power means aligning with the jobs that pay money, aligning with the ways that you can feed yourself. It aligns with where your bread is buttered, basically. And the truth is, from what we've seen with this top-down structure, the printing of money constantly has created this mental illness, because these are not real jobs. Financial engineer is not a real job. Propagandist isn't a real job, but they aligned with power because that's where the money was. So the best and brightest went into that field, but that's what's falling apart now. You can see here Cernovich saying exactly that. ZERP, cheap money, means the smartest people in the world spent the last 20 years finding novel ways to front-run trades and skim fractions of pennies at scale. Ron Paul was right about everything. Without fiat currency, these people would be doing something useful, and that is the main problem. That's why we've got people like this sludge person who ran that story last week with Hassan Piker on that podcast, saying, yeah, she steals, but the truth about her is, here was the house she lived in before her parents got indicted for human trafficking. She's the one with that townhouse in New York City, which is right around the corner from my old house, by the way. I checked where her house was because she was confronted in it, and because I walked around my neighborhood a lot when I lived in Brooklyn because I had babies, and I was always walking them on the when they strap them to your body and you walk around. I did that every morning. That was my number one thing as a young dad, was taking the baby from the mother, my wife, in the mornings, and going out of the house for about 2 hours, walking around and watching New York City wake up with my little children. And so when I saw her house, I can kind of tell neighborhoods where you find a brownstone like that in New York City, because not every neighborhood's the same. Williamsburg doesn't have a lot of brownstones, for example. It's all those aluminum sided homes. So I know the look of different neighborhoods. And when I saw her brownstone, I said, that looks like my old neighborhood. And then I found out her address, and I realized it was just about 2 blocks away from where I used to live. And so, and weirdly, I also, because of the price of her house, was exactly the price that my home sold for in the summer of 2020. So, you just know those things. So indeed, this person is, from this background, right? This is the mansion that the New York writer Gia Tolentino grew up in before her parents were indicted for a massive human trafficking scheme that basically involved forcing Filipino migrants into slavery. Her parents trafficked hundreds of immigrants into the U.S., then threatened them with deportation if they spoke out against abusive living conditions and extremely predatory loans that basically forced the migrants into a form of indentured servitude or modern-day slavery. Her parents ultimately stole almost 2.8 million U.S. trash tokens and fraudulent visa fees before being indicted on 40 counts of money laundering, conspiracy to smuggle immigrants, and visa fraud. According to court documents, the fraud worked like this. The Tolentino family took school administrators on free trips to luxury beach resorts in the Philippines. In exchange for the luxury holiday, school administrators would then interview Filipino teachers and agree to hire them to their school district. At first, the school district promised to employ 55 teachers. With this preliminary order, the Tolentino family charged each of the teachers 10,000 U.S. trash tokens for a non-refundable deposit and extracted a promise to pay up to 50% of their U.S. salaries for their first few years of employment. Before even making it to the U.S., most teachers were therefore placed in debt, roughly equivalent to 2 years of median family income in the Philippines. This debt quickly became crushing because the Tolentino family business Omni Consortium, a predatory loan shark company called Blue Pacific, to deliver loans at an annual interest rate of 60%. 60%! Blue Pacific required that each recruit have a co-signer in the Philippines. Co-signers were threatened with jail time if recruits were unable to make monthly payments. The Tolentino family failed to secure employment for many of the teachers once they arrived in the U.S., so many of them failed to make their monthly payments. If recruits failed to make a payment to the Tolentinos, they would charge an additional 10% penalty on the loan payment, plus an additional 5% interest. This is one of the craziest fiat scams you've ever heard of in your whole life. At least one victim of the Tolentinos filed for T-non-S, which is a temporary immigration benefit for victims of human trafficking. While ultimately unsuccessful in their overall T non-immigrant status appeal, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services did determine that the victim had been a victim of human trafficking at the hands of the Tolentinos. Upon review, the applicant established that she has been a victim of a severe form of trafficking in persons and that her physical presence in the United States is an account of a severe form of human trafficking in persons. So DHS agency determined that the Tolentino family engaged in a severe form of human trafficking that basically involved forcing migrants into a kind of modern slavery. Isn't it perfect? Isn't it perfect that sludge person who's stealing from Whole Foods, who's laughing about murder, behaves in this way? It's perfect. After a lengthy trial, lawyers hired by the Tolentinos secured a ruling mistrial on a technicality because two of the jurors read some newspaper articles about the case. They ultimately pleaded to conspiracy to defraud the U.S. government and received 3 months probation, not prison. According to the El Paso Times reporting in August 2008 sentencing, the Tolentinos ultimately forfeited the $1.75 million trash token house in Houston, 80,000 U.S. trash tokens from 5 different bank accounts held under the names of parents and grandparents, a Mercedes, a BMW, real estate properties in Houston and McAllen. Her mother, Angelica, had her charges dismissed in August 2008, specifically in exchange for agreeing not to contest the forfeiture order. Gia's mother avoided prosecution by letting the assets go, which suggests the family treated the forfeiture as the real cost of the case rather than the criminal sentence, which was about 3 months probation each for Noel and grandmother Florita. So just perfect stuff. Just absolutely perfect stuff. You can't find a better story. It's as good as World War XI type stuff. So you love to see it. Couldn't happen to a better person, it seems. Now, again, going back to the top-down frame, you can see how Fiat is just creating all of these sludge people, all of these fucking monsters, how it's creating all of this propaganda, how it's funding all of this brainwashing. And it's the same situation in Canada. Yesterday, you're seeing why this contrast between Trump and Carney is so perfect. Now, again, you know how I love the simulation whole aspect. I believe Trump, of course, chose Mark Carney as the Prime Minister of Canada because Trump can get more out of Canada with Carney there. Carney does have a sort of catalyzing accelerationism to him because he's a pure Fiat sludge person. And here he is yesterday setting up his sovereign wealth fund in Canada. And again, it's all fake. It's completely fake. He's got the Sir Isaac Brock toy again. So Sir Isaac Brock, again, just a British agent who killed Americans over a trade dispute and ultimately was killed himself, led to Andrew Jackson and all of the reaction to the War of 1812, which Andrew Jackson prosecuted and then kicked out the British system. So here he is with his Mike Myers gift of the statue or the toy of Sir Isaac Brock, talking about the sovereign wealth fund of Canada. And of course, Canada doesn't have any wealth anymore. They have to use debt as the foundation of their sovereign wealth fund. And here he is. He's going to be doing a conference, by the way, about this in a few weeks. It's pretty funny stuff. I'll play the video because it's just funny to hear him in his pathetic way describing this.
Each other. And to make sure that all Canadians can share in these benefits, we're creating the Canada Strong Fund, Canada's first sovereign wealth fund. The Canada Strong Fund.
First of all, it is the first federal one, but Quebec has a sovereign wealth fund. Alberta has a sovereign wealth fund. Ontario doesn't have exactly a sovereign wealth fund, but it has something similar to a sovereign wealth fund, or it behaves like one. It's the pension. It's a pension plan, but it's a lot of money.
Will invest alongside the private sector in nation-building projects to create wealth for Canadians today and our kids tomorrow. And if you have a bit of extra money, we'll make it easy for you to invest in the fund to help build Canada Strong for all. Canadians are choosing to buy Canadian, to explore Canadian, and build Canadian, because it's our country, and we're building our future together.
So the only persuasive thing about this is putting that toy in the image. There it is if you don't see it. And again, this is not going to go over well with the United States. And you see here what this sovereign wealth fund is really all about. Here's Francis Pouliot already predicting and correctly saying, who wants to bet that some clever set of fiat banker shenanigans, Brookfield and or its business interests will magically benefit from this tremendously? And of course, that was already his feeling, but you're seeing it come through immediately. It's hilarious. Here's some details from Jason James about what's going on. It's hilarious. Okay, so a few points on this. A sovereign wealth fund can only be created with surplus capital. Norway, the country that is the model for Mark Carney's fund, created their sovereign wealth fund out of profits. Canada doesn't have a surplus. We have debt. So essentially, Carney is creating a sovereign wealth fund out of debt and betting that the profits will exceed the interest with your money. Carney's sovereign wealth fund is cleverly disguised insurance policy to attract private investment and ensure investments from fund managers like, wait for it, of course, pure fiat shenanigans. Francis had it exactly spot on. Didn't even need to read it. Again, this is what's important about the Bitcoin ecosystem and the network. We didn't even need to know that Brookfield was going to be, we didn't have to see an announcement. We knew it was fiat shenanigans with the incentives there because you have to be able to follow the money. That's how you understand what's going on in the world. The Liberals under Justin Trudeau there, you guessed it, it's Brookfield, right? And the cult of net zero. I love that their net zero is like their slogan. You're net zero. It's a zero. You got nothing. Scared away trillions in private investment under Mark Carney. They failed to secure a trade deal with the United States. What that means is Canada's economy is hollow. It has no investment for growth and nowhere to send its products since China buys almost nothing from us and the EU is too far away for any real trade to occur. It just doesn't make any sense logistically. So what Carney is trying to do is artificially inflate Canada's economy with a huge surge of cash, money his own government is printing, and money invested by everyday Canadians. The aspiration is to create a big enough pot to attract private investment and ensure those investments with the fund. If any of the projects fail, Carney and the Liberals will pay out the private investors with your money. What he's starting here is potentially a national Ponzi scheme. Alberta will need to protect itself since oil and gas will be central to this fund. In the coming months, I suspect the Liberals will take further steps to federalize the oil and gas industries. This is not economic strategy. This is the comparable to putting your last $20 in a slot machine and hoping you win big. And that is the fiat shenanigans right there. Here's the, I don't know what, finance minister. Yeah. So this is like the secretary of the treasury in Canada, or in the United States, but a bit more fake and gay. Here we see him yesterday when asked about this funding, the $25 billion. He comes out and says that he perfectly says it. It's because they have a good debt rating, and that's how they're going to fund it. So I'll play this for you. Make sure I have the audio.
Can you explain a little bit more where the money for this fund is coming from, and specifically how much of this $25 billion endowment will be debt versus equity from the government?
Well, that's a very good question. So what we said in our release today is that we will invest $25 billion as seed capital in the fund. As you know, Canada, because we're one of the very few countries in the world, I would say there's only 2 countries in the G7 which have a AAA credit rating. Canada can borrow on the international market at some of the lowest rates that you can see. And therefore, by putting the seed money, we will be able to invest in these projects, in these Canadian companies, and generate a higher returns for Canadians. What is unique in what we're saying today, I think, I mean, some people will look at other sovereign wealth funds that exist in the Nordic countries, for example. But the uniqueness, I would say, of this fund is to build Canadian projects, to support Canadian companies, but also have a retail aspect to it that Canadians, should they choose to do so, can co-invest with us in building this country and benefit both collectively but also individually from these nation-building investments.
Thank you. And what's the target return on this fund?
Well, we will, the first thing we're going to do, so today is the announcement. Today there's something like the spring update, so there'll be a bit more detail if you follow me tomorrow. And then we will consult with the financial industries, different stakeholders, to make sure that we structure it in a way that will achieve the purpose that we have, which is to support nation-building projects, support Canadian company, co-invest with the private sector, because that's very important. We're going to go co-investing with them, and you'll see this is going to be an entity which will be independent from the government. I think the governance aspect is very important. It's going to be arm's length from the government, and I think investors, business people, and other funds will see that as a very important aspect of it. So we're looking at best practices to really set something which would be uniquely Canadian, inspired by best practices in the G7, and provide returns to Canadians.
Anyway, obviously it's going to fail. It's a retarded idea. So they're going to try and create a sovereign wealth fund out of fucking debt based on a AAA rating, and then they're going to manage it, and they hope they get enough debt that other people throw in money because it's an insurance policy to bail out other people. And that's all it is. It's just a scam, a pure fiat scam. And again, that's why understanding these financial flows, understanding incentives, understanding these models, understanding what pays for brainwashing, understand what all of this stuff is the only way you can make any sense about what's going on in the world, because you're not going to get it from news outlets. You're not going to get it from any of these folks, because it's just too baked into the cake now. It's just too much a part of the incentive structures. That's why it's all burning down. And that's why, again, I predicted, that the audits of 2026 are going to be one of the biggest stories, because it gets into these financial flows and will create storylines and narratives of itself. And we're seeing, indeed, yesterday, great Bitcoiner Kelly Loeffler here talking about the audits even more. Kelly Loeffler, and this is something we've been waiting for in America. This is another sign that the audits are going to bring upon more of this season of accountability. Here, Kelly Loeffler, the small business secretary, who I've spent time with. I've met her before she was a senator. When she launched Backed, I helped put the Backed launch on stage in 2018 in New York City. She's really great. I'm a fan. Here she has the Bitcoin startup small business, I guess you will. She owns the New York Stock Exchange, by the way. That's where she made all of her money. Here saying last week, Small Business Association sent over 560,000 PPP and EIDL borrows. So this all comes from the COVID money. And here saying collections of 22 billion in delinquent and suspected fraudulent loans, the largest debt referral in agency history. The White House Anti-Fraud Task Force is moving at Trump speed to hold fraudsters accountable and claw back every dollar stolen from American taxpayers. So a good sign that the season of accountability is upon us, and a good sign that we're understanding more about these flows. We're understanding more about the nature of the fight we're in, more about the system, again, that is this top-down structure, that is this financial flows that go into brainwashing, go into these institutions and create this bank-run world. But the audits reverse this. And, at this Bitcoin conference, for example, you see a lot of people who are from this top-down world. Of course, we see a lot of suits at these events, but I've never had a problem with suits. It doesn't really bother me. Here is Francis Pouliot saying much the same, and this is what we use as leverage to change the system. And Francis is right. He says the ratio of cypherpunks versus suits in Bitcoin is probably decreasing. I don't care about that at all. The absolute number of cypherpunks working on Bitcoin is at a historical all-time high, and it's not even close. That is what matters, and Francis has it exactly right. It doesn't matter how many suits are getting involved in Bitcoin. The more Bitcoiners you have working for this new leverage system, the more you have spinning this pyramid upside down and turning the world upside down, having money as the basis of this to encourage human flourishing. This is the American system. This is the Hamiltonian system. This is the world we're going back to. And that's why cypherpunks are important to spin this leverage and bring us to that point. And we have good news from the event. It's time to mention it, of course. This is, all kinds of people. Bitcoin Magazine is putting Kash Patel and what about samurai and all these things? Well, it's all going to work out, guys. Here you had the Attorney General yesterday saying they're not going to prosecute code writing anymore, and that the samurai devs indeed are about to be free. So yeah, timing could have been better, but remember, that's always the stupidest criticism of anything. Everything could be sooner, right? You can say that about anything. That's always the case. Could have done it sooner. At least it's getting done. Now I don't like that Keenan is in. Obviously, I don't like it. I think he's a great guy. We want him out yesterday, but we can't get hung up on timing of all these things. It's like with Ross when it wasn't day 1 and it was like day 10 or whatever. Come on. You think Ross is really complaining about day 1 versus day 10? Now, it should have been much faster. Sure. But it's happening, and we can see the world is changing, and we have to just be thankful that it's changing in the way that it's changing.
With the FBI as well. The basic principle is that if you are developing software, if you are a coder, if you are part of that process, and you are not the third-party user, and you are not helping and knowing the third party is using what you develop to commit crimes, you are not going to be investigated and not going to be charged. And obviously facts matter, because if you're laundering money or violating sanctions, the mere fact that you happen to be a coder doesn't excuse you from criminal liability. So there's a distinction there, and that's why the facts of a particular case are very important. But I really need coders to understand, I really need the industry to understand that we have fundamentally changed the game when it comes to our investigations. And if you're a coder out there and you're listening to me speak, and you are under investigation, or you have to hire a lawyer to respond to subpoenas, your lawyer should feel very comfortable communicating with the FBI, communicating with the prosecutor on the case, and making sure that they are not violating my memo. Because if they are, that can be elevated all the way to me, but certainly elevated within the department, because we are not doing that anymore. And I know that there's some lingering cases that are very fact specific and very procedurally complicated, and I'm not saying that as an excuse. It's a fact. It's the way it is. But those cases are something that we're continuing to deal with. But let me make myself crystal clear that I want to put my money where my mouth is, and I expect Director Patel does as well. And when we say that we're not conducting those type of prosecutions anymore, we mean it. And I want to make sure that is felt throughout the industry.
So we're hoping. We'll see. We got this comment from Comedy Mysterious World, Season of Accountability, and you still like Jack Dorsey? Well, don't forget, I was probably the only podcaster, or whatever you call what we do here in the morning. I don't really think it as podcasting, talk radio. I'm the only commenter that publicly, aggressively denounced Jack Dorsey many times. I called him a scumbag. I called him every name on this book. I had a rant to tell him to go fuck himself, scumbag, brainwasher, especially when he was pushing Russia collusion the day before the 2024 election. I socialized that amongst a lot of Bitcoiners as well. But when he did all his stuff recently with Cash App, I liked it so much, and just generally believe it was enough for me to not really bother and worry about Jack Dorsey. Indeed, I haven't heard him apologize. The censorship was all real. You lose a boatload of Bitcoin using Bluetooth dingus. Yeah. I don't use his, I make fun of BitChat, by the way. Where's my BitChat? It's like the best pimp tool that he's created. You can keep your whore like a block away, and then you have your BitChat, and you can say, where's my BitChat? And so I've never really, I can see why people like it, but I've never seen it as anything but a whore management tool. And I love that it's called not BitChat, but BitChat. So that isn't what got me to, let's say, not bother anymore with Jack Dorsey. I don't trust the guy, but I really like what he's built at Cash App. I think it's just a tremendous product. So, I mean, I would love him to, if he apologized, that would be great. It's true. And I will say, the reason I was so angry about him leading up to the 2024 election is because I've defended him many times. and it made me a liar. And so I have a problem when people make me a liar is not the right word. If I mislead you, which I feel like I did by defending him so much, it makes me feel like I didn't do my job. It makes me feel bad. I don't like that. And so he made me bad at my job, which is to help you guys go through all of this change and what's going on in the world. So, but his tool is so good that, you know, I'm not going to get stressed out about him. And there you go. So if he didn't come out with all those new innovations at Cash App, I would still be one of the biggest Jack Dorsey critics around here. So, and I was for a long time. So there you go. Yeah, Nolan hated him. Yeah. Saw Dorsey at Totally Redeem Yourself. And I've hung out with Jack Dorsey before. I've met him. You know, not a friend or anything, but I booked him for Consensus 2018 by meeting him in New York City, getting him to come to the event. I hung out with him in the green room before the event. We talked all about what was going on and Bitcoin and this and that. It was, you know, yeah. So, you know, it's only because of the quality, the world-class quality of his product, of his Bitcoin product. I think Cash App is one of the top Bitcoin companies in the space. And so I just can't deny the quality of what he's built and the usefulness of what he's built. So there you go. Now you know why Pam Bondi was relieved of her duty. Isn't that guy great? So far, so good. Elon is censoring Twitter more than Jack ever did. Laugh my ass off, says Barely 45. Yeah, it looks like it. I'm not totally sure, but lots of people are saying that. So there you go. Day 10 is better than 23 in one living, if you know your phrase. Oh, we got Hank in the house, everyone. Hold on. I will get back to comments before I leave, but let me say hello to Hank. How you doing, Hank?
Hey, Nolan, I'm doing well. How are you? How's Vegas? It looks
We're
beautiful.
getting everyone to buy XRP, where they're running ads now.
Oh no, Garlinghouse is back at it again. Where they
I have
got
to
you
put my head
staying?
here.
Where they got you staying there? It looks like you're in some kind of infrared sauna over there. It looks nice.
No, it's just lighting, you know, desert tan, the desert tan.
Ooh, I'm jealous. I wish I could tan. That must be nice.
Tan. We got the desert tan coming through. I got a new light in my studio in Montreal, though, so I won't be so shadowy when I come back.
Yeah, you got a good face. The world wants to see that face. What are you doing hiding it from us?
We don't want the shadows.
Oh, the shadows. Speaking of which, how's things going in Vegas right now? How's the first day of the conference? Best one yet? Biggest one yet?
No, not even close. No. There's a bear market one even. It's I think, you know, the vibe is here though. I was a little apprehensive about what energy was going to be here, and but the minute the show got going and I went and walked the floor, I saw the energy was there. There's all kinds of people that are here that you want to see, and you know, there's no, despite what's going on and David Bailey and Nakamoto and everybody fighting and everybody hating and all that, a lot of people still showed up, and you know, the Bitcoin community, let's say, is still here. And you know, people, why are you going? I got all kinds of DMs like they're fucking scammers, and it's like, look, we're in Bitcoin. Like, what are we supposed to do? You got to meet clients, you got to meet people, you gotta mingle, and it happens here. So what are you supposed to judge everybody? And we're not at church. Like,
no,
you know what I mean? It's not church. It's just a meeting, and it's fun.
Satoshi's watching. Careful.
Yeah,
he's always watching.
I was hanging out with G Money yesterday. Had a lot of good things
love
to say
G
about
Money.
you. Yeah, he loves G Money.
He's fun, man. That guy is fun. I like him. I'm surprised he's not like even bigger than he already is, because he's just the personality.
G Money is his G Money T-shirt. This is
that's
his
sick.
flag. You know, the digital 1776. So
boy, there's a lot happening on that shirt there.
Yeah, he's got the software antlers. He's even got the Bitcoin US flag here.
Oh wow. Love it.
It's good.
G Money is a character. I love it. So cool.
So what are we talking about on the show today, my man?
oh, the ceasefire, that's probably never going to happen. Oil prices are really fun right now. We got Rubio has some statements on the Strait of Hormuz. I think he referred to it as like a nuclear, he essentially called the Strait of Hormuz a nuclear weapon that's being used on the entire world right now. We got some news of agentic trading out of Gemini. There's a lot happening in the world today, so I'll be excited to break it down with you. I'll let you close things up here at Great Awakening, but everybody stay tuned. I'll have Nolan on Roxham TV News right after this.
Fun. All right, everyone. You heard Hank. I'm going to be over there in 1 second. Pardon me. I can't get to all. Love good talk radio, indeed. Cannot get to. Definitely feels like talk radio to me. Yeah, that's what I go for, John Toro. I don't think of this show as podcasting per se. I think of it as talk radio. That's always been my frame for what I'm trying to do here with you all. That's why when people say, can you record? I've tried before, like when I couldn't do a show live, to do it without the live audience. It's terrible. It's like throwing with my left hand or something. It's awful. Like it's like I feel disoriented. I feel, instead of like walking on land, I'm, trying to swim upside down backwards or something like that. It just feels very awkward to me without this stuff. I don't know what it is about not having the live chat and the feedback, but it completely disorients me and makes me like my own conviction in what I'm saying diminishes because I don't feel the feedback instantly. And so conviction is probably the wrong word. I maybe become more self-conscious about the delivery versus like I'm acting, if you will. I don't know if that is the right frame, but when it's live, it just feels like we're having coffee together and I'm sitting at a coffee table talking with you, and the feedback turns it into somewhat of a dialogue, even though obviously it's a lot of monologuing on the show. The liveness to me anyway is it's essential to what we do here. That's why I don't think of it as podcasting. I think of it as more like something like live talk radio. So there you go. Stay awake, gang. It's no coincidence that XRB is being held while Bitcoin is in the Sin City. No, of course not. Nolan looks younger now in his home studio when in his home studio. It's just a light. I haven't been on Twitter since they booted Unc Donnie. Who's Unc Donnie? Jack has made huge strides in the Bitcoin space. Yeah, have a great day today. Do you have any main stage appearances today? Yes, I do, Jack 2K. At around 2 o'clock, I think I'm on the main stage. It's market stuff, though. It's, I'm not sure. We're not going to be Trumping and all that stuff. I'm not interviewing Mike Benz or anything. Criminals love Bitcoin. Of course they do, Eric Red. The dollar crashed to Bitcoin when Bitcoin hit $1, then another major crash when it hit 2, and so on. Bitcoin is a DARPA operation, everything leading back to the Pentagon, even the early promotion of it, like soldiers mining coin on taxpayer. I don't know about that, Eric Red. I've been in Bitcoin that long that I don't remember any DARPA plans. But even if, I don't care. Thanks for the show, Nolan. Thanks, Barely45. You just gave me an idea for an invention. Thanks, Nolan. Happy to do it. Unc Donnie is Geotus. Okay. It's like a good music performance, one-sided without a live audience. Yeah, exactly. I'm not on Twitter due to censorship. Yeah, I totally respect people who aren't. For what I do, I don't have a choice because I don't know where else to get the information. I don't think I could do this show without Twitter. I mean, basically, the news, even the fake news, is just what people said on Twitter. And so, as you see, I share Twitter pages. I share the timeline with you every day to monitor the situation. I just find it's good for that. Now, one day when we're out of World War III and we're not doing this show anymore, then I will be happy to get rid of Twitter because I definitely notice increase in mental health when I'm not on it. So it takes a lot to, weed through what is psyops and all that stuff. But that's why we do it together every day, right? And that's how we do it today. It was a method to destabilize world currencies like it has done. Yeah, we welcome. We hate the world currencies. We're here to separate money and state. Now, to the extent that Bitcoin maybe was created by one of these government agencies, then it's to prevent any country from being the reserve currency going forward. Who profits most from crypto hidden money, says Eric Red. Who profits most would be the average individual for not having to suffer the brainwashing effects of the collusion of money and state and the confluence of money and state. What you want is to separate money and state so that the state can't monopolize money in order to use it to brainwash people. All right, I wish I can get into more of it. Thanks, guys. Maxie's gonna Maxie and haters gonna hate. Thanks, Nolan. Thanks, Fiat Apocalypse. I see Twitter via shows like yours. I'm out with Owen. When we reach the golden age, I'm checking out. Until then, fight, fight, fight. All right, guys, come see me on Hank's show. Peace out. I'm about to play the logo and the thanks for watching screen. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you later. I'll be back from Vegas tomorrow. Remember, no show Thursday. I will remind you again tomorrow. Flying home Thursday, no show, nothing like that's happening. We'll be back Friday, but we'll see you tomorrow first. Peace.